stick around because I want to tell you all of the things I learned when I vended at my very first quilt/craft show. Hi everybody, it's Claudia from Create with Claudia, and today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the things that I learned when I started vending at quilt/craft shows. I started this last year in 2023, and I did maybe, I think 4 or 5 of them last year, and I really enjoyed it, but I learned a whole bunch about it because I was a newbie, and I learned some things that not to do and some things that I should try to do next time. So I did these shows, I did various ones. One was solely for crafts. It wasn't dedicated to quilts at all. The other ones were quilt related. And one was quilt/knitting/crochet. So there were a whole little mix of craft quilt shows that I did last year. And I learned a bunch from them. The very first one was totally quilts. It was all a quilt show, which was a good way for me to get my feet wet, I think. And luckily I had my daughter with me. And that taught me the most, but each one consecutively I learned some new things. First and foremost is all about the money, and the big thing is have change. I can't stress that enough. A lot of people pay cash. I was actually surprised how many people still paid cash at quilt shows. In fact, the majority of people that bought things at my booth paid cash. That being said, another thing I learned, and I was lucky I had this, was one of those sort of card swipers, excuse me. It just plugged into my phone, the bottom of my phone. I believe mine is the square, and it works really well for me. Again, I don't do a lot of these shows. I don't process a lot of credit cards, but that worked really well. And I'll tell you, some people were really surprised that I had one, and they would ask, like, do you take credit cards? And I said, yes, I do. And that probably got me some more sales. If I had not had that, I think there were probably quite a few sales that I wouldn't have had. And there was one larger sale which sort of blew me away. I was surprised. I sell tote bags and things like that, and because I took charge cards, she bought more than one. Another thing along the lines of the money is, and I made this mistake at one of them, but then I didn't make it anymore, is have your money separated. Like the one I had some change and I would just pull money from it and go grab snacks or whatever. But I kind of like to know how much I make at the end of a show. And if I keep the money separate, I have my personal money and then my show money, I could make change from that. And then at the end of the night, I knew if I started out with $50, if there was like 100 in there, I know I made $50 on the show. Whereas if you're pulling stuff out to go shopping, because believe me, that's the other thing is when downtime, I also like to walk around and maybe do my own shopping. You can't keep track of how much money you're actually making on your show because, if you end up buying a quilt pattern from somebody next door, that could happen. So I highly recommend maybe I have like a money pouch or a money like a box, a money box, that kind of thing that you can lock. Or I liked having just a pouch around my waist because then when I left my table, I took it with me and I wasn't worried about it. Really think about your display when you're setting up and you're getting ready for a show. All of the contracts I signed had a specific, they had a floor chart, well, except for one, but they told you how much space, what kind of table you were getting, if you needed to bring your own things. And so you could what I did is actually a run through in my basement. I sort of graphed out with some paper, just very easy with some tape and some paper, some blank paper on the floor, figured out how much space I had, and then sort of laid out, sort of guess where the tables would be, that kind of thing. Now, I'm not going to guarantee that it's always the same, because that happened to me a couple times that it wasn't the size that I was thinking it would be, or it was just a little bit of a different layout. And you just sort of go with the flow with that. But for the most part, it was pretty specific how your layout was. And that helped me because that helped me set up a lot quicker. And again, with a helper, it went a lot quicker too. But it's nice to have a sort of a layout so you know what you're going to be doing when you're doing that display. And along that lines, and when I first started, I didn't have a lot of display equipment, I guess you could call it, like higher displays, lower ones. I brought some baskets from home. I didn't want to put a lot of money into it in case it was a total bomb and I didn't sell anything. But I do recommend maybe some different heights. There were some people that had beautiful displays and they're very eye-catching. And so you got to really think about that too, is how eye-catching your display is. I'm not super great at doing that, but I was lucky. I brought on the back, sort of like the quilt behind me now. I have a photo backdrop that I took to all of the shows and was able to hang up one of my sort of eye-catching quilts, and that drew a lot of people in, and they liked that. And then I would, of course, show them that pattern and then show them my other patterns. So, and then one show I had, they gave me table coverings, so that was nice. I didn't need to worry about that. For the other ones, I used quilts, and that way that people could see that. I will say, it seemed when I put my quilts down as a tablecloth, it was kind of busy, and so some of the items that were on the table got lost. I really liked the one show had black tablecloths, and you really do see things better like that. So that's actually something I want to work on, is improving my display, because there are some knockout displays when you walk around craft shows, but I definitely liked the different heights and things like that. Even my daughter, when she was helping me set up, was like, Mom, you need to get some different things with different heights, because that people then like to look around and things like that. The other thing that I did with my display, and this was in one of the last shows, and I have to thank my husband for this. This was his idea, and I think it's a great idea. As you know, if you're here, I do a lot of YouTube videos, and what I did is I took my iPad, set it up, turned it around so people could watch, and just had one of my more popular videos on loop, and people would stop by and watch it a little bit, and then they'd say, oh, that's you, and so that got a conversation started too. And it just was a little bit of interest, because most people don't have like a video display at their booth, and so people would come in, conversation gets started, and then maybe I'll buy a pattern from you or whatever, some fabric. So that was really interesting. So part of your display, like I said, I have to thank my husband for that idea, but think about different ways you can sort of show off your talents and your projects. Next up is definitely take your contract with you that you signed when you signed up for the craft fair or the quilt show, because sometimes there's things in there that maybe the organizer forgot to put maybe at your booth. I know in one of mine I was supposed to have 2 tables and I got 1, and then I pulled out my contract, and it was just a little confusion. It was no big deal, but you definitely want to make sure you have that so that you can refer back to it in case there's any kind of issue. And that was, I think, the second one I did. And so from then on, I just took it with me, because I sort of assumed that they would know, what I needed, and so I was glad I had that paper with me. So definitely bring your contract with you. Another one to think about, and this is sort of a silly one, but it's going to save you some money, and also if you don't have a helper, it helps you with booth time and things like that. Bring your own snacks. Some places don't sell snacks. I've been to 1 or 2, actually 2 of the ones that I was at last year did not have a snack. I think they had water, and it can be a really long day when you're sitting there all day and you don't really get a break. So it's something you kind of forget about, but throw just a little bag of crackers or something in your bag, or a bottle of water, whatever it is. And I was kind of surprised that the 2 of them didn't have any snacks, but because I don't think, usually when I go to a craft fair, there's usually snacks around. So the first and second show I had just a cart, sort of a flat bed type cart. It was collapsible, so it's nice, it's lightweight, and it worked well, but it didn't work for everything, because sometimes it's nice to have sides on it. So I ended up getting one of these carts. It looks like a big, almost like an old-fashioned wagon, but it's canvas and it expands. It's also very lightweight, but I recommend taking a nice cart with you, or a dolly or something like that. At one of the shows I did, my neighbor did not have anything, and she had loads of supplies to take back to her car, and our cars at this particular one were parked far away, so you had to walk a ways, and I felt really bad. I sort of shared the dolly with her, because it just would have been impossible to take all of the stuff back and forth from the car. So I highly recommend, if you don't have one, like even a wagon, like a kid's wagon would work, but something that you can pull so that you don't have to carry it back and forth, because you never know, your car might not be right outside the front door, and even if it is, you don't want to carry, make a bunch of trips. So if you have some kind of a cart or a wagon, I highly recommend getting one of those. What to do during downtime. This was hard for me, because a couple of the shows I was at were really slow, and there was a lot of downtime. And after a while, there's only so much you can say to your neighbors, and you can, if it's really slow, you can walk around and look at the other booths and things like that. So have something to do during your downtime. I wish I'd brought some hand stitching with me. I didn't do that, because that would probably spark some interest from some of the people coming by and looking at your booth, and that way I would actually get some work done. In one of them, closer to the end, on one of the last shows I did of the last year, I did take binding for a quilt, and I was surprised how many people that drew in saying, hey, that's interesting. And of course I didn't do it the whole time, but when it was really slow and there was maybe, just one or two people sort of milling around the show, it was the perfect time to get that done. And I finished binding my quilt, so there was a bonus in that too. In one of the shows, it was really fun, and this isn't for everybody, and I mean, this was actually the first show I did. One of the other vendors wanted to barter with me, and at first I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that, but it ended up I gave away one of the tote bags I made. She was interested in one, and she gave me a quilt rack that, like they have these wall quilt racks, and so that was the exchange, was a tote bag for one of those, and so I got a really nice quilt rack for it, and she got one of my nice tote bags. Now, again, that's not for everybody, and my guess is a lot of vendors don't want to do that. I don't know, but you know, it's something. If you make friends with somebody and you talk to them about it, who knows what you might get in return. So this is one that probably is harder for some people than others. I can be very organized when I want to be. I can make a long list, but I do recommend you're organized. And I do recommend you make a list before you start. Everything that you want to pack up, maybe have some plastic bins or whatever you're taking them in. I like the clear plastic bins so I can see what's in them. And I had a really specific list, and it included like pens, you know, clips, paper clips, but business cards, everything that I wanted to do in there. And it's been updated since the first and second shows because there were things I didn't take that I thought, oh man, that'd be a good thing to have. It goes back to sort of to the supplies, but I highly recommend being organized, laying it all out, and you're, you know, packing it all up nice and neatly. Now it's different when you're packing up to go home. I just threw everything in the boxes and took it home and worried about it later. But when you're packing up to go, I highly recommend getting organized by having a list and having some, you know, clear boxes or something like that so you can see where you're taking. Another thing that I think is really important, and it sounds kind of silly, but you just got to go with the flow. Every person that walks by your booth is different. It's funny because I watch TikTok videos sometimes, and they show there's always this one where it's like, you know, the different types of people you see at a craft show. And it is spot on the money. It's so funny. You have people that are really chatty and want to talk to you, which is great. You have people that just want to look and keep walking. You have some people that say a few words. Everybody's different, and that's okay. And you just got to go with the flow. I know when I first started, I thought, okay, you know, everybody's going to chit chat. Everybody wants to say hi, and it is totally not like that. And you learn to kind of like gauge the temperature in the room, I guess you could say. And it all worked out. Everybody was delightful. I only had one person that was a little snippy, and you know, that was, maybe they were having a bad day, whatever. But I met so many nice people. It's so much fun to do these. I made some money, which was nice. One, I will say, was not at all. I barely broke even, which was a shame because I was really looking forward to it. It was one that was based on crafts. It was not a quilt show, and but I still had fun because, you know, you're talking to your neighbors. You get a cup of cocoa or coffee. This was near Christmas, so it was fun. Everybody was in a festive mood. But you just gotta go with the flow, and if things aren't perfect, you know, it's okay too. It all works out in the end. Another thing to think about is have enough supplies. My very first one, I ran out of bags. I didn't think, number one, I didn't know how many customers I would have. I had absolutely no idea how to do this. I sort of went in and read some things on the internet and figured, okay, I can learn, I can do this. And I ran out of bags. So, and some people really like to get shopping bags when they buy something. Other people didn't want a bag, so it's very hit or miss. But definitely, if you think you have enough, maybe throw in a couple more because you never know if you're going to need bags. Or not just bags, but any kind of supply. Maybe you need a pen or something like that. This next one, again, it was very hit or miss depending on the show I did. If you can manage it, bring a helper with you. Luckily, my husband has filled in for me, or been with me, a couple of times. My daughter, she was home for college break, so she helped me a couple times, and then the rest of the time I was on my own. I will tell you, there are times when you need to use the restroom, or you want to just go get a snack or something like that, and you just want to walk around for 5 minutes because you're tired of sitting there. It's really nice to have a helper. So you can leave your booth. Now, you can leave it there unattended, especially if it's like a real slow time. And I will say my caveat here is that all of the shows I did were not super busy all of the time. Sometimes they had sort of spurts where they were really busy, and then there were other times where there was downtime. But it really, really helped me to have a helper with me. And it's fun, too, if you have somebody to talk to. Now, if you don't have a helper, here's another tip for you. Make friends with the people around you. I was lucky. Everybody in all the booths around me was very nice. We would chat. Some of the shows, a couple of them were really slow that I was at, and you just, there's not much else to do, and so you make friends with them. And it's also nice because if you're by yourself and you need to step away for a few minutes, they don't mind watching your booth, and vice versa. I mean, we helped each other out when we were by ourselves, depending on the show I was at. So it really does help to make friends, and you can make connections that way. In fact, at one of the shows I did, I made connections with a quilt shop, and then the next show that I did, they were at it as well and bought a whole bunch of my patterns wholesale. So that was really fun, and it was a great way to make some new connections with a quilt shop. So yeah, definitely make friends with the vendors around you. If you have something to give away, like a business card or something, definitely take it. And you want to have like your website on there, maybe your Etsy shop or whatever kind of shop you have. You definitely want to have that to give away. A lot of people took my business cards. And in fact, one person emailed me because my email's on it and wanted to get a couple patterns. So again, that's a different way of making connections, but you definitely want to have something to give them. And I forgot to put them out on the first show at the beginning. And luckily somebody came by and said, hey, do you have a business card that I can take? And I was glad they said that because it reminded me, oh yeah, I got to put those out. So that is something that you want to do. Every contract I had for my shows for last year all specified stay till the end. And it's really hard because usually people know when that show is going to end. So maybe about like 15, 20, maybe even half an hour before the show ends, it's pretty dead. And it's tempting to start packing up. And you might, throw a few things in a box. But I have to say, except for one show, every show that I was at, there was a sale in like 15 minutes before it closed. So it was worth it for me to stay till the end. And they get some shows were more, serious about staying till the end. There was one where everybody was gone before like half an hour before it closed because literally nobody was there. And I figured if other people were doing it, I was okay. But a lot of the contracts, I think it was everyone except for one, maybe, they all specified please stay till the end. And I honor that because I get it, they're trying to bring people in too. So, but I did have sales during those last like 15, 20 minutes. If you send out emails, have an email list sign up. I got a ton of new email signups. In fact, I put it next to my iPad and then I put it near with some business cards next to it and right out in front. And a lot of people are like, oh, what's this? And I'd say, oh, I send out an email every, 2 weeks or twice a month. And I got many, many signups, which was really nice because it's a great way to build up your email list if you send out emails. And a lot of people do these days. So just if you're doing that, don't forget to have a sign-up sheet for an email list. And if you're doing any shows, maybe if you're a quilter and you're going to give like a class at a quilt guild or something, you might want to put a sign up for that. Whatever any kind of announcements like that is fun. People will look at them, not all the time, but but it's a nice way to build up an audience. So there you go. There are the things that I learned, or the things that stood out to me as a new vendor last year doing a few shows. I hope they've helped you. If you're just starting out, if you have been doing these forever and have it down pat, I'd love to know what your tips are. If you have any more suggestions, I'd love to hear them, and I'm sure everybody else would, so make sure to leave me a comment. I do appreciate you stopping by. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.